Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to get started in just about 30 seconds, so we will get started shortly. If you're just joining us, we're going to give it about 15 more seconds for folks to settle in, and we'll get started in just a couple seconds here. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. Well, hello again, everyone. Welcome, and thank you to everyone joining us today for part 2 of Fresh Energy's Intersection of Energy and Community webinar series. I'm Ben Passer, Lead Director of Energy Access and Equity at Fresh Energy. Fresh Energy is a Minnesota-based nonprofit working toward a vision of a just, prosperous, and resilient future powered by a shared commitment to a carbon-neutral economy. Too often throughout history, communities including Black, Indigenous, people of color, LGBTQ plus individuals, individuals in rural geographies, and many others have been left behind in times of transformational change. As the energy sector strives to aggressively decarbonize to mitigate the impacts of climate change, it has an obligation to learn from past transitions when policy choices excluded marginalized communities at best and actively harmed them at worst. Today, we're going to discuss how we can dramatically reduce carbon emissions in a way that improves our communities and benefits everyone. And our focus is the workforce of the future. Over the next hour, our panel of experts will discuss how Minnesota can ensure broad access to jobs in the clean energy economy. According to a recent report from our friends at Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, our state had over 61,000 clean energy jobs in 2019, with thousands more in the broader utility industry. But over 11,000 of those jobs were lost during 2020. As these critical sectors get back to work in the months ahead, it's important to ensure that the energy workforce includes an equitable and diverse representation of Minnesotans, including small businesses, women, people of color, and veterans. Before we get too far along, I just want to extend a shout out and thank you to all of our promotional partners who helped spread the word about this event. Thank you to AIA, CERTS, Climate Generation, Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition, Minnesota Electrical Association, MNSEA, Pollen, RMI, Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, and WSB. Thank you. I'm very excited to be joined today by Nina Axelson, founder of Grid Catalyst, Bob Blake, founder and CEO of Solar Bear, and Jamez Staples, president and CEO of Renewable Energy Partners. We're hoping that our guests today and those listening to the podcast leave with a clear understanding that the broad references to clean energy jobs that we've been hearing in the media and at the federal and state level amount to actual employment opportunities for real people, and what it will take to maximize these opportunities here in Minnesota for equitable job growth. We're going to start out with a panel discussion and then move into Q&A for the last 15 minutes or so. Many of you submitted questions in advance, but if you didn't, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, not the chat, and we will do our best to answer your questions throughout our time today. Now, feel free to start asking questions using the Q&A function as they come up, and for folks who are here in attendance, Zoom's Q&A has an upvote function, so you'll see the questions that are coming in, and if there's a question you see that you want answered, feel free to vote for it, and that will let us know what questions you all are interested in having answered by our panelists here today. All right, now let's shift gears to our panelists. We're going to be covering a lot today, so I want to dive right in. So Bob, let's go ahead and get started with you. We're going to shift gears in a little bit to talking more about the details of your projects and your organization, but I'd love to just start with kind of lightning round introductions. So in a minute or so, if you would share a little bit more about yourself and your organization, just for means of introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. My name is Robert Blake, and I am the owner of Solar Bear. We're a solar installation company serving the state of Minnesota, and currently we are installing a project on the Red Lake Indian Reservation, which I am also a tribal citizen of the Red Lake Nation. And also, I'm the executive director of Native Sun Community Power Development. We're a nonprofit located in Minneapolis, also. And also, I'm on the workforce develop, or the Minnesota, or I'm sorry, the Minnesota Governor's Workforce Development Board, and the Ramsey County Workforce Innovation Board, WIB. So yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Bob, and really glad to have you here. Jamez, let's go to you next for a minute introduction of yourself and your organization.
Sure. Thank you, Ben. Jamez Staples, CEO of Renewable Energy Partners and Northgate Development. And so Northgate Development is a real estate holding company, which is responsible for the Regional Apprenticeship Training Center, which we are developing here in North Minneapolis, where I'm a resident, and also the CEO of Renewable Energy Partners, a solar installation and development firm. I serve on numerous boards. I would say the Energy Utility Diversity Group, which I also was with Ben on, the Energy Vision Advisory Committee, and a host of others.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamez, and really glad to have you here as well. And last but not least, Nina, we'll turn to you for a minute introduction of yourself and your organization.
Thank you, Ben. I know it's the lightning round, but I do want to just express gratitude to Fresh Energy and the organizers of this event and my fellow panelists. It's just such an exciting time for these conversations and a lot of important work to do, so appreciate you bringing us together. So Nina Axelson, I'm the founder of Grid Catalyst. We are a new clean energy accelerator. We actually launched last month as a signature program of Clean Energy Economy Minnesota. So really excited to be working with that team. That's the go-to business resource in the clean energy space here in Minnesota. So we will be launching our first cohort this fall of clean energy startups and trying to really move the dial on innovation, new business leadership, really creating a space for innovation, entrepreneurship in the clean energy space here in the Midwest, with a focus on demonstration and making sure that we can really raise up that next generation of leadership and success here in this category, as well as trying to tackle the very specific northern climate decarbonization challenges we have.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you for being here. So as we'll, I think, hear throughout the afternoon here today, I think of you all as visionaries, as thought leaders in really helping to develop an equitable clean energy economy and the workforce that it will take to drive that clean energy transition here in Minnesota. So I'd love to start with a question really getting to your vision. So what philosophy or approach do you all bring to your work? And for each of you, what is an example of a project that you're working on that embodies this approach? So Bob, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. You know, I feel like the world is giving us this big problem, right? It's like, you know, it's sick right now. The world is sick right now, and it's throwing up on us. But it's telling us though that, you know, we could solve a lot of our other problems with this big problem, you know, and that's why, you know, when I think about the work that, you know, I did with the Department of Corrections and training inmates on how to do solar installation with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association partnership, you know, it's the whole idea there was to fight mass incarceration with climate change, fight climate change and mass incarceration, right? So, you know, we've got this big problem, you know, guys, I need your help, you know, fighting this thing, and, you know, jump in here and give me a hand, you know what I'm saying? And so I feel like that right there is like my philosophy, and like, we've got this big problem. Let's fix a lot of our little problems with it, right? Let's fix our other problems with it. And so I would say that the Returning Citizens Initiative kind of exemplifies that philosophy, and you know, that idea of the way that I'm looking at all this, you know. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks so much, Bob. Jamez, how about you? Your philosophy and approach, and an example of a project that embodies that.
Sure. So one of the things that we see that me and my company, we all value, is the opportunity to present address the issue of climate change and poverty at the same time, acknowledging that, you know, without the workforce and without the lowest income people, the lower income people of color who are mostly impacted by these issues, actively getting engaged, becoming more aware of what's actually happening, and then actively participating as an opportunity to help enhance their own personal financial future, that's a great opportunity that's being presented. And so one of the elements that we're bringing as a mechanism to address that issue is the Regional Apprenticeship Training Center here in North Minneapolis on the highest used transit line in the state of Minnesota, because when you look at where the training programs are, they're not accessible. 2 hours in some instances, one way to get to some of the programs, and some of the other ones aren't even accessible by transit. So by bringing those two pieces together, making sure that the lowest income people, the lowest rung, have that opportunity, we can help to actually broaden out that scale of the workforce and create that opportunity for folks so they can participate.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jamez. And Nina, how about you? Your philosophy or approach and example of a project that you're working on that embodies that?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Coming from the world of kind of big engineering and utility work, I've seen a lot of really incredible leadership in the public sector and private sector on energy and climate change, and I have deep appreciation for that. But I also think we're at a time where the democratization of energy and the access, who's in power, who has influence, is really shifting. And I think that's an incredible opportunity if we make the most of that. So I'm really looking to see how a clean energy accelerator plays a role in what kind of leaders who are in that bigger system right now can emerge to lead their own ventures, so that we can have community-driven ownership and community-driven leadership. And that has good partnership with these bigger entities too, that we don't have an either or situation. So I think as we look at how the solutions are going to come to the market and how we deal with climate change, we have that opportunity to also really shift leadership, influence, voice, and who's at the table for leading that, as well as who gets considered in the work and the investments in the infrastructure. So Grid Catalyst really wants to be a part of opening up some new lanes for those opportunities.
Great. Thanks so much, Nina. And I think what I heard from each of you and what I think personally excites me about the leadership of all of our panelists here today and the work that you all are doing is this idea of system change. I think all of you are really thinking about how do we move systems not just around the energy sector and addressing climate change, but around all of the things that overlap with that, around democratic participation and the economy and housing and all of those items. And I think it just is so exciting to see that you all are experts in really building out this clean energy workforce, but you're doing it in a way that addresses other parts of our society and our systems. And I think I'm just so excited to hear that from all of you and to dig in even deeper. So I think to that point, you've shared more around your philosophy and approach, but I'd love to hear more from you all, kind of in your own words, how your organizations and your projects differ from what folks might think of as traditional workforce development. I think we are generally familiar with kind of longstanding workforce development programs and strategies, but how do your perspectives and your projects differ from that? And who are your key partners in advancing that work? Bob, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that key partners would probably be the MREA, the Midwest Renewable Energy Association. I went to the Solar Training Academy and I thought that the program was great, and and just with the training that I've had, been able to do the stuff that I've been able to do so far, and and that's how I went out to North Dakota to Standing Rock, and we did a training there with tribal members from 20 different tribes. So it's workforce development, yeah, you're in these metro areas, but there's also these rural areas. There's these other areas that need to be identified and worked with. You know what I mean? And so we have to go to them. We have to bring this to them. So and this is something I advocate on the Governor's Workforce Board too. But I'm guys, we've got 11 tribal workforce centers. We got 11 tribal nations, 11 tribal workforce centers. And they are the best kept secret in the state of Minnesota. We need to start utilizing them. We need to start working with them. So we've got to go out to these rural areas, and we need to get them on board with this because and they want to do this too. So I'd say that's how maybe I differ a little bit, is going to where I believe that we can and we can also influence, right? We can also influence these areas too. because we need them to be on board because climate change, it doesn't know any boundaries. So.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Bob. And agreed, it's so important to meet people where they are, literally and figuratively. So that's really great. Jamez, how about you? How your projects, differ from a traditional workforce development approach and your key partners.
Sure. So, our projects are a lot different because we focus on impact projects at Renewable Energy Partners. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the training center is a key component of that. And that's all the nonprofit stuff and partners that we put together. So meaning that we don't, aside from owning a piece of property, we're using that property for its best and highest use. And that took a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of resources to maintain and manage that building over the last 4.5 years, 5 years now, or I'm sorry, 4.5 years, because no one's helping you really in that process, right? You're just kind of like, you've got a vision, you've got an idea, and you want to use this thing so you can help address. So I wanted to use it so I can help address the issues in my community, specifically the North Minneapolis, but also the broader region at large too. And so our partners in that have been the city of Minneapolis, because one of our projects that I didn't mention earlier is the low-income community solar garden, which the city of Minneapolis is an anchor subscriber in, as is the Minneapolis Public Schools. And those two partners right there are institutions, major institutions that have a lot of influence and sway on people, right, in our community. And so we work with MREA, just as Bob and I serve on the board together. In addition to that, we're working with a Vivo and Project for Pride Living. Vivo is licensed post-secondary educational institution. Project for Pride Living engages youth. They have a program called the LEAP Network, which is the Learn, Earn, and Achieve Potential program. And what that is, that's a program that they have. They have alternative schools that they work directly with. And those schools, those young people that only get 60% of the funding of a traditional district don't traditionally get career and technical education. And our goal is to make sure that this facility is an asset to them in that regard. In addition, Xcel Energy is a partner because, as you know, the Community Solar Gardens program wouldn't be possible without them. And so we're working with all these partners to bring not only just low-income community solar gardens to the community, but also to make sure that people have an opportunity to work on these types of projects and earn revenue off of them.
Great. Thanks so much, Jamez. And I love the diversity of the sectors that you highlighted in those partnerships. I think, thinking about housing partners and institutional partners in municipalities and, the just opportunities there and just the different intervention points to reach folks, I think is really exciting to hear. I love just what you highlighted there. Nina, how about you?
When you bring partners together, when you bring all these partners together, it ultimately starts to bring a different level of synergy, and you can start to address a lot of other issues at the same time too.
Absolutely. I think that's really well said. Thank you, Jamez. Nina, how about you? How your organization and projects differ from traditional approaches and your key partners?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And I'm glad to say that there's that common thread in what Bob and Jamez are saying as far as community-led initiatives. And I think the more that we can give the community the opportunity to define what success they want to see. So if they want to see climate change and affordable housing come together, and climate change and renewable energy, clean tech come together, that we empower that at that local level. So again, really great that we have big initiatives and big partners that are promoting success and change. And we couldn't do it without that happening as well. But this opportunity to have folks who haven't previously either had the funding, the resources, the support, the pathways to design their own businesses and initiatives, I think that that's a really important aspect of this, because then their solutions are more likely to reflect the needs and the values of the community where they're leading. They're able to hire within those communities. They're able to develop workforce training, as our examples show here, that reflect that need in the community. So, even as we look at the jobs profile, and again, my key partner is Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, who produces their jobs report with their partners each year. And so we look and we see lots of energy efficiency jobs. And I'm really glad we have these solar and wind jobs. They're really strong components of the workforce profile here in Minnesota. But recognizing that as this energy system is adapting really quickly and technology is adapting, that we create the opportunity for those jobs to also be sourced here and also develop here. And the manufacturing and assembly has that opportunity here, so that we're not just diversifying who leads and who hires and who works but also just all those innovations that come with it. So hopefully, maybe a little overly optimistic here, but I really think that that's that big opportunity in Minnesota because we have that incredible community leadership. So let's make sure that these innovators and entrepreneurs are given as much support as they need to rise up within that within this space.
Awesome. Thank you, Nina. And I for one, love the optimism. So thank you for that. So I think to that point, I would love to turn more to what are the opportunities and also what are the barriers? We know, I think as all of you have acknowledged, that this work takes time. There's a lot to address. There's, partnerships to develop, and that work just takes time to build out. But I think having said that, I would love to envision a scenario where change could happen overnight. So if someone came along and gave you 3 wishes to address equitable job growth in the energy sector, what would they be? So Bob, let's start with you and your 3 wishes.
Oh, well, first wish is more buy-in from our political leaders, like them being a part of this and them believing in climate change, the climate crisis. So that'd be the first wish. Second wish, I've been advocating this now for a little while now, but I want reservations, tribal nations to be classified as renewable energy zones. So REZ, R-E-Z, and that's kind of what we call the reservations is REZ. That's our little slang term for it. But I think it would make perfect sense. And I think through investment tax credits or maybe new market credits, so I'm not talking reparations here, but I mean, I'm just talking something, that would benefit the investors and whatnot. So that would be my second wish, is for something like that to happen. And, the third wish is, somehow just how do we all work together? Like, like NAPSI, like the National Association of Minority Contractors, the IBEW, it just how do we all come together and just work together for the common good like that? Those are my 3 wishes. Like that's where, if we could get those together, I'd be just happy camper.
That's great. Thank you, Bob. And I love the double meaning of REZ in your second wish there. That's awesome. All right, Jamez, how about you? You and your 3 wishes.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of wishes that I could have, but I would probably say the continued bipartisan support. And first of all, I want to say Bob had a really good one with the IBEW. I wish we could get more buy-in from IBEW and some of these other partners. But mine, I would say, I'd say continued bipartisan support. We did receive an appropriation from the legislature this year, and we're very appreciative of that bipartisan support that helps to create this access point for training to start to create jobs, because ultimately what happens is people end up on the tax roll when they get good jobs. More compelling messaging around clean energy to reach more people. Finding innovative ways to get the lower income people who are focused more so on just keeping the lights on. So that they can understand that there's an opportunity for them to get clean energy and to make money on the process, and also, like I say, get clean energy too. And I would also then say more partnerships, public-private partnerships. The corporate investments and the public entities need to come together really to make this a front and center issue, and work together and find ways to work with individuals like us on this panel right now, because we have very innovative ideas. And the fact that we're here on this panel right now says something to the world in my mind, but to get them to actually move and do something is everything else. So those are my 3 wishes.
That's really well said, Jamez, and important points. I think to your first point around always wanting more wishes, I was thinking you were maybe going to wish for 1 million more wishes with your first wish, but went a different direction there. All right. Nina, how about you? You and your 3 wishes.
I'm gonna write down the other wishes and keep them on post-it notes on my wall, so we're all kind of remembering how important they are. And my first one is gonna emulate what you already heard, which is we need to have more alignment about what's possible here. And easier said than done, obviously, but when I come out of both an environmental background and a business background, and to me, I've always seen them as a joint opportunity, and that we can act on climate while also creating a really strong economy. And so I if I had one wish, it would be for that to be understood in a way that we didn't have to compete about aspects of this as if they were against each other. So, and I think that's what we're seeing with these types of conversations is we want to create good jobs. We want to see strong business leadership and growth, and we want to act on climate. And so that's, if you only gave me one wish, I feel like that would resolve a lot of the other things. But if I'm going to get a couple more, I would say that this idea of opening up the clean energy marketplace, and that's a really nebulous concept, but in this way of recognizing that I come from a niche energy industry that oftentimes people didn't know about, and recognizing that solar and wind are very important, and battery storage is really exciting, and electrification is a really important method of decarbonizing. But within that, there's all these other products that make the grid more adaptable to the future that we want. And there's going to be widgets that need to be produced, and there's software concepts that make it all come together. And so I think if folks can both recognize and invest in that diversification of products and services, that's a really great way. And I think that that's what we're seeing from investors in this space right now. And I think that's what opens up a lot of smaller business opportunities to complement the larger industries that we already have doing really well in Minnesota. And then the last thing I think is empowering beyond, and you have this word in the notes, Ben, but gatekeepers. I think there are some historic folks who have been really risk averse to new technology, and I think that is shifting. And so, if I were going to compel the people listening, it is if you have that opportunity to influence, to lean into opening the door for a new opportunity, a new investment, a new technology, because even if you're not at the top of the food chain, you can still have influence over that. And the more that we really try and raise those voices and then lend that microphone to others, I think that that's going to create those new job opportunities and new projects. And for us on demonstration, that's where that comes in, because if the first person says no and you don't get to talk to anybody else, we don't get these products into the marketplace. So they certainly have to meet technical and economic criteria, but I would just say that, again, willingness and openness and sharing a decision-making. Maybe I just shoved like 4 wishes into my last one. I'm maybe cheating.
Thanks, Nina. I think you win the award for most efficient use of wishes, just from the first, everything that you packed into the first and third there. But that, I think, is a great segue into our closing question, your point around how people listening to and watching this webinar can use their own influence to help really support this shift, and I think where we all want to see the clean energy economy grow. So I'll just close with each of you. If you could tell someone who's interested in supporting equitable workforce development in clean energy through economic investment, policy development, you name it, one thing, what would you tell them? One thing that they should act on as we close out here. Bob, let's start with you.
Yeah, I've been working with the Citizens Climate Lobby and doing some writing with them and doing stuff on carbon pricing, and that's I just really feel that if we could how we do some pricing on carbon and use those funds to create investments in clean energy projects and create jobs. It just has to be a part of the matrix now going forward. So that's would probably be my advice, is to support that type of cause, that type of idea out there, and I think that would be a catalyst, a jump to more clean energy jobs and investment and around it, and help us get off the oil, man. Help us get off the gas. You know what I mean? And so I think that would be something I would ask people to do, is to support that.
Thanks, Bob. Jamez, how about you?
I guess I'd tell someone, we're at a critical point right now. This is a major inflection point in time. This is like the Industrial Revolution all over again. And there are so many opportunities that this industry this industry alone presents products, equipment, materials, jobs, technology. And even if you just look at it from the business case alone, right? I mean, there's a ton of money to be made. There's a ton of good that can be done, and you should want to be a part of it. So that's what I would probably tell them, is that get off your duff and do something.
Awesome. Thanks, Jemez. Nina, how about you?
Well, I like Jemez's, that's a good call to action. So, I would say that my program with Grid Catalyst and the work that I've done in the energy industry is nothing without partnership. So I would just really encourage those listening. I think we all know we can't do these things alone. And so if you have a big idea, share it with someone so that it can get to the next level. If you're working on something, don't be afraid to reach out to someone to make it happen. And I think if you are someone in a position of power, let some other folks in to do the work with you, and surround yourself with some folks who are going to challenge you and make you do things better. So I know partnership, again, is a little bit of a nebulous thing, but we have too much of infighting and conflict in the world. So if we could maybe have more partnership and more openness, that's really where I think we need to be to move forward.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nina. So I just want to give a quick plug. We're at about halfway through our hour here today. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A function. Again, don't use the chat, use the Q&A function here on Zoom, and we'll populate those. And folks who are here in attendance, please feel free to upvote those questions if there's anything that piques your interest and you want to see our panelists here today answer for you all. So before we shift gears, I'm going to kind of wing it here and share my three wishes. I was so inspired by what all of you shared. And I think just wanted to really build on that. I think my first wish would be more resources for equitable job growth. I think what I've heard from you all throughout the course of our conversation has been the importance of resources, to catalyze new ideas, as Nina has touched on, or for Bob and Jemez, the resources necessary to really take these ideas to the next level and to help resource those key partnerships that are advancing your work. And Jemez, I know your work in particular has been a big journey to really get those resources to move that forward. And so I think just from all of you and your leadership, I've seen the importance of resources to support this work. I think my second wish, really building off of what Jemez shared, would be just to get involved. We've seen how important it is to engage in civic participation. We've seen just broadly across decision making how important it is to make sure that folks are able to access the process. And so I think just being able to get involved, reducing barriers to get involved, is I think a huge catalyst. I hope for equitable job growth, and that would be my second wish, to really make sure that we're allowing folks who want to participate in the clean energy economy to do so. And then I think my third wish would really just to be to continue to highlight the great work of organizations like this. I think you all, as I mentioned at the start of our conversation, are visionary leaders. You're really advancing some really key ideas, and I just really want to make sure that you all are continuing to be highlighted, and that those key partnerships that you're working on with key allies are able to move forward. So I guess those would be my three wishes, just to kind of close us out there. So before we move on, I do just want to take a moment to recognize Great River Energy. They are our sponsor for today's conversation about the workforce of the future. So thank you so much to Great River Energy for sponsoring today's event. Now, before we start the Q&A, I just want to remind everyone that the intersection of energy and community will return next Thursday at noon with a conversation between my colleague Janice Watts, Senior Associate on Fresh Energy's Energy Access and Equity team. She, along with Russ Stark, Chief Resilience Officer for the City of St. Paul, and Audrey Arkin, youth member on the St. Paul Climate Justice Advisory Board, will be discussing authentic community engagement. So I hope you will join us again next Thursday at noon. And while we're on the subject of events, registration is now open for our virtual benefit breakfast on October 14th. featuring award-winning climate tech entrepreneur Danelle Baird, CEO of Brooklyn-based Block Power, that is a tongue twister, an organization proving that businesses can tackle carbon pollution while making a profit and creating family-supporting jobs. Register at fresh-energy.org/benefit breakfast. All right, and we will now switch gears to the Q&A. There's been a couple of questions already dropping in the Q&A function here on Zoom. Please feel free to keep adding your questions as the conversation goes on. I would love to start with a question from Janet, and this was submitted prior to our webinar today. But we've heard a lot of conversation around the American Rescue Plan, stimulus funds, and really just, I think, to our earlier conversation, the influx of resources to support recovery in our communities coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So Janet asked, how can St. Paul and Minneapolis best use American Rescue Plan funds to develop a workforce to electrify homes and commercial businesses and to build and promote renewable energy? Nina, maybe I'll start with you.
Knew that was going to happen. Yeah, so I don't work on some of these current community-based projects as closely as Bob Jamez do, so really interested to hear what they'll say about it. But I will say what I'm hearing is some of the immediate demands. I'm really hoping that there's a lot of balance between some opportunities right in front of us as there's other infrastructure investment happening in the cities that we can, where things may have been cut a little tight on budget, look at whether some of those things could be improved. So when we're building out infrastructure and we haven't been able to do the energy efficiency or the climate considerations, seeing some of the resources go into making sure that we are investing in long-term benefit. I think that that's an important aspect of this work, because I've worked on too many large-scale redevelopment projects where some more climate advantageous technology came in, but it was right at the same cost, and so it doesn't get the win. So I'm really hoping that we just are able to improve and build on where there's already investment happening. Certainly have the opportunities to make sure that there's local job creation and stabilization within, whether that's low income energy efficiency investments, and where we know people are hurting the most, it needs to obviously be a priority. And then the last thing is this, we've said it over and over again in this session, there is systemic change that needs to happen. And so making sure that some of that pot of money goes into not just infrastructure investment as long-term change, but system changes to make sure that, again, we are lifting up workforce development opportunities and training centers and accelerators for not just our system, but just are we putting that funds into the people that are going to create the next thing we need. So that long-term vision of making sure there's enough room at the table for everybody. So I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Nina. Bob or Jamez, any thoughts from you on how significant funds could be used to support these efforts, especially at the local level?
Yeah, just, Ben, I mean, communication, cooperation, collaboration, right? Amongst the governor's workforce board, the Ramsey workforce board, the Hennepin County, this is so much money coming into just Minneapolis and St. Paul, right? Like, there's got to be that coordination, right? Because what happens is everybody starts doing their own thing and we're doubling up and we're losing sight of everything, and then we say we can't do this because we don't have enough money for that. And if we just would have coordinated and worked together, you know what I mean? So that's what I see that needs to happen, at least as I look at all this and I see what's being talked about. So just that collaboration and just everybody communicating with each other, because we can't drop the ball on this, man. This is just a once in a lifetime thing, and we really need to work together. So everybody's got to check their ego at the door and just basically do what's right for the greater good, so to speak. That's what I would say.
That's great. Thanks, Bob. And you coined the 3 C's for us: collaboration, coordination, and communication. I love that. Jamez, how about you?
I'm a big fan of what Bob said, but I'll take it a step further. I would say that, the cities need to, and wherever this money's coming from, it's all government money, right? We need to be working with the private sector also. I think that, once we can incentivize the private sector to do more, be it as subscribers in partnership and utilize their roofs for solar, or support the workforce initiatives that need to take place in order to shore up the shortage in our economy, because we're lacking. We have a mismatch of skills happening right now. And if we can get people on a trajectory, at least entered into the workforce so they can sustain themselves right now, and then help them pathway themselves to the next level of wherever they want to go, I think that that's going to be a great opportunity. But government can't fix this problem itself, and the private sector needs to be involved, as does philanthropy. So I'm a big fan of Bob's 3 C's, but I think we need to just take it a couple steps further.
Thanks, Jamez. That's great. So I want to shift gears to our Q&A box here. And Dave Hunter asked, jobs for folks with lower incomes, under-resourced people, and BIPOC communities will often require education even before training. And I think some of our conversation has alluded to this. So how are people going to get educated and trained so that they are eligible for the new jobs? And Jamez, maybe I'll start with you for this one.
Thank you for that, Bob. It's kind of like a softball. Well, you got to engage people. You have to let them know that there's an opportunity out there first. That's first and foremost. Let them know that one, they can actually save money. You attach things to the purse strings financially, and people move a little bit different, right? So once you think about that, I can help you save money, right, by doing an energy efficiency project on your home. But then the idea that hey, look, you can actually work in this industry because it's something that you're interested in, and then show them what the financials look like. What can you make per hour? What does the workload look like? And then if they have an interest, then you can ultimately help them get pathways directly to it. And that's where the training center plays a critical role in this, in terms of being a highly accessible facility on Plymouth and Fremont. The facility is outfitted with solar as a demonstration. So all these are demonstrations that are taking place, that have already taken place and are functional or will be implemented. We've got solar on the building. We've got battery storage, which will make it the first virtual power plant in the North America, from what I'm told. We have a complete stormwater retrofit that's managing all the stormwater on site. So yesterday when it rained, we had a big pond out in the front, but it was intentional. In addition, we have electric vehicle charging stations on site, and we have a heat pump system that'll put the gas utility on standby. So the facility itself is intended to be a living laboratory for individuals to have the opportunity to engage, understand, see, and then work and learn all on site. And then from there, it's about getting them connected with the right people who want to hire them.
That's so awesome, Jamez. I think the learning lab concept is so exciting. And I think you're exactly right. Just being able to engage with something allows you to envision it and envision yourself in it. And I love the fact that you raised that. Nina or Bob, anything else to add?
Yeah, Ben, I would say that, I would like to do, more of an education to the people who are going to be hiring, to the core, to the companies, to the, doing education to these people that, like myself, the business owners, right? Like, you're talking about, you want to help people of color and people that are low income to get into this field. You have to understand, sometimes the bus doesn't come on time. Maybe there's a transportation problem. Maybe there's a babysitting problem. There are just things, there are cultural things that I think that these like owners of these companies need to understand, because, you can hurt people. You can really damage people if you set them up for a great job, and maybe they couldn't make it because they couldn't find a babysitter, and then all of a sudden you fire them, but you don't know the situation. You know what I mean? So there's got to be some type of training also for the people that are doing the hiring. You know what I mean? So I think what Jamez said is great. That's really important. But I think one of the key factors of that is on the other side of that teeter-totter, right? The people are doing the hiring, so they need to go through some type of education, as far as you want to be reaching out to BIPOC communities and hiring people. You need to get some education on what pitfalls are going to be there. So that's what I would like to see, Ben.
I so appreciate that point, Bob. And I just want to mention, I think Eric raises an interesting question in the Q&A that speaks to that somewhat. And he asked, what are the biggest non-skill barriers to employment faced by the communities you work in and with? Besides getting the training and education itself, what stops people from getting the jobs? And so, Bob, I think you just spoke to that a little bit, but just for all three of you, I would love to hear. And Nina, I know we didn't necessarily touch on training and education with you specifically, but any thoughts around just non-skill barriers that haven't been raised yet already in the course of our conversation?
I guess if I was going to kind of pick up from both pieces, I think Bob's point about relationships, and I think we're hearing that from everybody here in this discussion, is these businesses need to have touch points in the community. And so either being led from the community, in which case you're already embedded and understand what some of those challenges can be. But if not, there is a responsibility to understand what those issues are. And it cannot be a day of job posting kind of relationship, right? We've seen that over and over again, where people don't understand why they're not getting diverse candidates and better success in their hiring, because they don't have those relationships. And so I think relationship building can start now and just keep getting stronger and stronger, and then they'll understand what some of those concerns and limitations are going to be. And I think that's been a persistent issue for I don't know, probably hundreds of years, right? So it is something that I think has to change. And just on the last topic, really quickly, I'll note that I think where that can start is in the schools, right? So we already have schools that have underinvestment and education that has underinvestment. And so if that public-private partnership can be both an investment into supporting schools and green job exposure, I think that creates more, it creates the relationship, it solves some of the problems, and getting young people early to understand what incredible jobs there are in this sector. So I come from, my dad taught at South Minneapolis High School, and my brother is a teacher in Robbinsdale. And I just always see that if we can make those touch points when they're younger, so that they know that that's an opportunity for them, that seems like a really great way to tackle some key areas there.
And Ben, if I could just say too real quick, had a situation with a couple of my guys a couple of weeks ago. My supervisor basically said, Bob, maybe we shouldn't hire these guys, keep these guys on. And I just basically told him, I says, here at Solar Bear, I want to build solar projects, but I also want to build people. You know what I mean? And that's and so I didn't give up on them. And they're working today. They're installing today. And, he's told me that they've gotten better. You know what I mean? They are showing up on time now. So, I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like there's got to be that mindset of our business owners too, that they got to get an education too, and how to deal with, our communities.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob. And thank you, Nina. Jamez, how about you, and any non-skill barriers to raise here?
Sure. I think, I can appreciate Bob's point. I think it's absolutely imperative, especially with the fact that we're talking about BIPOC communities who haven't traditionally been engaged. What's important to understand is that we need to be more sensitive and understanding with that population. If they haven't had this opportunity before, they may not necessarily know exactly what is expected of them, right? And yes, being on time is number one, right? And being able to do your job is number two. But yes, there are issues that will arise, and there is some stuff on the other side that we need, as business owners, need to be sensitive to. I go through it, Bob goes through it, and it's challenging, right? It is challenging, especially when you have something that you need to get done. You've made a promise to a client, and you have to deliver on that promise, and that's challenging. And as frustrating as you may be about the issues that may have arisen with the individual, I cannot be. I'll say I can't. I have to be more understanding, right? Because I know, coming from where I come from, anything could have happened, right? My brother was sick over the weekend, right? I mean, obviously I'm still doing what I got to do, but I mean, if I wasn't the owner of the company, my level of commitment to this isn't as high as it is because it's my brother, right? And we're dealing with an unprecedented level of violence in North Minneapolis right now. I mean, somebody's brother, nephew, cousin, gets shot on a daily basis almost, right? And it's disappointing. And you don't know what the situation is. So, I mean, being understanding is extremely important. And also acknowledging the fact that as on the other side, as the business owner, you don't know and you can't feel. You got to have compassion, right? I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Not the 3 strikes you're out, maybe 4, right? But some of these people have not had the project management experience, right? They've had an internship at it. They haven't necessarily had the full job, but they've had an internship. And it's up to us. If we want to start to see this transition happen, we need to be more patient as business owners. We need to be more understanding, and we have to be willing to walk with them and even train them in the process. I mean, not technically, the physical hands-on training, but also helping them understand what's expected of them too.
Thank you, Jamesh. I really appreciate that invitation and that encouragement to think differently, and that willingness to be responsive to the circumstances of the folks that we're working with, that we're engaging with, and just realize that if we're going to have equitable job growth, it takes equitable viewpoints and responsiveness to how we are all showing up in this work together. So I really appreciate that. So I want to move to the next question in the Q&A from Courtney, who asks, what is the single most important aspect of energy transitions that enable a community to be prepared to value or make these requests of their leaders, their states, their leaders, their political decision makers? Courtney said, it seems to me that this is a top-down, policy-driven industry without a grassroots capacity building approach. So I'll volley that all to you, and anyone who would like to jump in, please feel free.
I'll kick this one off. Yeah, I mean, yes, policy does drive a lot of things, right? And so, as a business owner, as a person who's helped with policy, as a former Humphrey Policy Fellow, and someone who's lobbied at the Capitol, you can't be in all places at one time, right? But we need to start developing those relationships at the ground level, right? And just continue to develop those relationships. And while we're developing those relationships, showing the value proposition that it starts to bring. Being a resident of North Minneapolis, we have some of the highest pollution rates, right? And highest asthma rates is what I mean. And so the challenge is like, we can actually help to fix our own issues, right? And that's what I focus on. If it's an issue of unemployment, if it's an issue of training, if it's an issue of whatever it may be, we need to be the people that we've been waiting for. We cannot wait on anybody else to come for us. We got to do what we need to do. And so by having those conversations and allowing, like, what I'm very appreciative of is the resources that the University of Minnesota puts out around community engagement, right? Because not a lot of people want to pay for that, right? I mean, the city of Minneapolis has done a lot of engagement around the Upper Harbor Terminal, but we don't see a whole lot of engagement around energy issues, right? And then there's and getting some resources for those organizations like Community Power that go out and do organize community, right? And those are, I mean, there's a groundswell. It's just kind of like fragmented. It's a lot of different little pieces that are happening, and we need to have and not like Bob said, check your ego at the door, right? Big organization, little organization, everybody's got a voice, and we need to figure out how to work collectively to get that groundswell to meet in the middle with the people at the top, right? So then everybody can start to communicate, and especially with our legislators, right? Because they're very, very busy. They've got all these different things, priorities, competing priorities, interests, right? Goals of their own. And, we have to be understanding that we need to come as a collective at some point with the mission to really fix the problem. And so I'm very grateful that we were able to get the legislation passed for the training center. I'm very grateful with Representative Long and Senator Chamberlain, who were willing to work across the aisle, right? I mean, but at the same time, the person on the street isn't going to have that relationship. So there's kind of like this vertical integration process where we can all start to work together and everybody can get it done.
Thanks, Jamesh.
Sorry about that. Representative Fooley was also assisted in that process too.
Great. Nina, were you about to jump in?
Yeah, it was just to share a few thoughts, piggybacking on I think some really good points there. So first of all, I think historically, unless there is something being cited in someone's neighborhood or there's that direct community impact, energy has seemed like something that happens. Decisions are made somewhere else. You don't know who the person is in charge. There's not an office in your neighborhood that you'd go and say, I don't like what's happening. So it has been so separate from the community for so long. And not to say that utilities and others don't have community engagement, but it is just not at that, truly at that neighborhood level. It's just not built to be that way. And I think that's changing. And it's, again, why I push for the more that we have these community-led initiatives, the more voice it offers. But I think that this trying to figure out how to do this at that block by block level, or to get to folks so that they say, oh, if I show up, I could have influence. I think we have to make sure that we're not only sharing power, but helping people recognize them. I think, again, that point that was just made, as far as you have to come in numbers, right? It's great if you got 5 loud people in your neighborhood, but those 5 people need to go door knock and get 50. And I'm grateful to Fresh Energy and Climate Generation and Sierra Club and many other organizations that have been doing that outreach certs, and others that are making sure that people know they have an opportunity. But I think we all know that it doesn't get to everybody. So I think supporting the organizations that are getting door to door and getting to churches and getting to neighborhood groups and neighborhood leaders, when I make my charitable donations, those are the folks that I'm supporting and trying to lift up their work. So I'm appreciative to that neighborhood work, but I think, I know Courtney already does some of this work, but making sure that we are helping bring more people to the table, and then making sure that they have a large enough voice to have influence, and that they know that that's possible.
Great, thanks, Nina. So we are just about on time. I'm going to close with one last question from Jean in the Q&A, and recognizing that we've got a couple of folks who do solar work and are also supporting solar work going forward. Jean asked, I'm a homeowner who has recently installed rooftop solar. Jean says, I love it. Do you offer a means for someone like me to help others afford solar? Or can you share ideas of other organizations or entities that can support more affordable solar in Minnesota? Bob, Jamez, Nina, anybody want to take that one away?
Oh yeah, Cooperative Energy Futures. I mean, they, Timothy, those guys, spectacular. They do an incredible job. They're always, doing stuff for, like, Project for Pride and Living, PPL. They do all that stuff. And then so supporting them. Also, I mean, like MNIPL, right? They do all these bulk buys, and they work with installers and whatnot. So I would say, reaching out to those organizations could help with getting people more interested or with solar. And the MREA also does bulk buys too. So that's another way too. Supporting those organizations that put together those kinds of packages really helps other homeowners in the community all do it together, because it's more affordable then, and then for the contractor, they don't have to drive all over town now. They could just do 3, 4, 5 houses in the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So those kinds of things, I think, and also too, statistics show that when one house gets it, another house wants to get it, and because the neighbors all talk to each other. So I think stuff like that is really exciting, and so support those organizations.
I would agree with Bob. Bob mentioned all the ones that I would have mentioned. I was concerned he was going to forget MREA. Which we both serve on the board of, but I'm glad you covered it.
Awesome. Nina, any to add?
I was just going to note that I know in some of the Minneapolis and St. Paul neighborhoods, the neighborhood organizations have started funds to complement some of their other community block grant programs for energy efficiency, and making sure that we're not just doing solar, but we're doing the energy efficiency work as well. So if someone's in their neighborhood, that's another just local option. Or if they don't have it already, you could maybe push them to start one.
Great. Thank you all. All great recommendations. So we are at the end of our hour here. So I do just want to say, on behalf of everyone here at Fresh Energy, thank you for attending part 2 of our Intersection of Energy and Community webinar series. And my sincere gratitude and huge thanks especially to Nina, Bob, and Jamez for sharing their time with us today. I so appreciate your time, your energy, and your insights. And it was great to talk with you and learn more about you and your work. A recording of this webinar will be posted at fresh-energy.org/publications. It will be available on our YouTube channel and on our podcast, Decarbonize, the Clean Energy Podcast, which is available on all podcasting apps. You can learn more about Fresh Energy's work at www.fresh-energy.org, and you can subscribe to our newsletter, check out the latest on our blog, and make a donation today. Thank you all so much for attending, and see you next Thursday.
Thanks, Ben.